So this is the headline circulating all around news outlets today. Tesla registrations in California drop in Q3. More specifically, the news is that Tesla's third quarter registrations in California dropped by 13%. Now, as you may or may not know, I recently purchased a Tesla Model Y Performance, and as a result, I've been following the delivery numbers, production numbers, all that kind of stuff very closely for the last few months. Now, based on all this information that I've gathered, I really want to share some insight with you guys on that, so I think it's going to be a very informative video with a different perspective here from what the media is trying to put across. And guys, if you could just take a second, please consider dropping a like for the YouTube algorithm. It helps the channel out tremendously. But now, let's talk Tesla. In this news report, it was noted that Tesla had 16,200 registrations in California in Q3, and this is a big improvement from Q2 where they had 9,800 registrations, but that number is a bit skewed because that was mainly due to the Fremont factory being shut down for a period of time, and when a factory shut down, they can't produce vehicles. Now, the bad news is that even though they registered 16,200 vehicles, it was still down 13% over last year's Q3. Adding to this, the Model 3 registrations in California fell 60% during the quarter to 6,500 units. This, I'm sure, is another stat the media is pushing to try to scare off retail investors who don't look further into the numbers, just look at headlines and take it for face value. Also keep in mind, this is all registration data, and there was some fine print in this article that tried to get buried, in my opinion. So it reads here that registration figures might not accurately reflect the number of vehicle deliveries during the quarter, as registrations in the US typically takes about 30 days from the time of sale. So the numbers are lagged and we can't take it for a complete face value, so keep that in mind. And guys, I really want to provide my insight and want to give you the full picture here, which I feel is right to do, and you can't really look at just one side of the story. You have to look at the broader story to understand what's going on with Tesla and if Q3 was really a bad quarter, and as a result, does that mean the stock is going to have a tough time in coming weeks? Firstly, you have to understand that the way Tesla produces and sells their cars is kind of a staggered approach. Because they have limited resources, just this one factory in Fremont that's producing these Model 3s, Model Ys, and they have a whole country or multiple countries to service, they're not able to fulfill that demand as customer orders come in. Just think about it. The Model 3 services markets even here, like in Canada. When we purchase the Model 3 here, it's actually produced in Fremont and it's shipped over here. So that one factory has to really service such a large region, thousands and thousands of customers all over the place, and California, which is the focus of this article, is just one part of that. This is also why when you go to the Tesla website, more often than not, there's a long wait time to order your car. Like here, the Model 3 for Ontario, Canada, it has a wait period right now of 5 to 9 weeks. Does that mean that there's no demand? Absolutely not. There's definitely demand for these cars. It's just that Tesla can't fulfill that demand as quickly as other manufacturers may be able to with larger facilities for production. So in my opinion, looking at one data point like California is a skewed way to look at this data, because maybe Tesla wasn't focused on California last quarter. Maybe they were focused on fulfilling other states. Maybe they focused on fulfilling orders in Canada. You can't really say, oh, California numbers were down, so there's no demand in California anymore, and yeah, that's the end of Tesla. Think about it. It'd be poor business practice for Tesla to only service the California market while the rest of the country and other countries are waiting for their cars to be delivered. Can you imagine being on, say, the East Coast in New York or in Boston or something, and you order a Model 3 and you have to wait a year to get your car because all Tesla does is service the California or the West market? That obviously would not sit well with consumers. They'd lose a ton of potential customers, and that would be poor business practice. Now, here's a much more accurate representation, in my opinion, of Model 3 numbers for the quarter. And this is data that Supercharging has put together for us. And what we can see is that year over year, looking at Q3 2020 versus Q3 2019, we see a nice increase in Model 3 deliveries despite quote unquote competition from companies like Volvo and Audi. The next thing that you really need to keep in mind when looking at articles like this, headlines like this, is that there's a new player on the block, the Model Y. Model Y is now in the mix, and yes, many people are choosing to go with the Y over the 3. Even I did, because it's based on the same chassis, but you get way more space and functionality out of the vehicle, and we all know that North Americans love their SUVs and crossovers, which is where the Model Y shines. Looking at data from Hypercharts again here, Model Y is ramping up nicely. And no, this isn't just California data, which is again a skewed way to look at any manufacturer and how they're doing. But instead, this data shows us the total number of Ys delivered, which we can see is exponentially ramping up. So yeah, it's natural to think that the Model 3 sales are probably going to suffer a bit, get hit a bit here, because now consumers have another option in a vehicle that's based on pretty much the same chassis, 75% same parts, I believe, as the Model 3. And yes, you do pay a little bit more, but you get so much more vehicle for that price. Of course, there's still going to be a market for Model 3. Of course, many people still prefer cars over SUVs. So that's why I don't really think this is a big issue. I think it's, a short-term thing where people are kind of like, wow, the Model Y is out, I want to buy this SUV. But then over time, people are like, SUV, car, I don't really need that much more space. I'm going to stick with a car, save a bit of money, and hey, the Model 3 is faster because it's a lighter vehicle. Finally, let's talk about other states. How are deliveries, registrations, all that stuff doing in other states? So they did collect data here for 23 states, and this accounts for around 65% of the US market, and sales here remained roughly equal to last year at around 32,800 vehicles. And guess what? The bottom line is that Tesla had a record Q3. While it's clear that S and X sales are declining, it's also clear that 3 and Y sales continue to do well across the world for Tesla. Tesla is a global business after all, so looking at data points like only California, which is just one state in one country in one continent, is a poor way, in my opinion, to really judge how this company is doing. This is really what, in my opinion, the bears want to put across. They pick one data point and they try to make everything about that because it definitely puts a bad image on it. And you can clearly see from the headlines, I'm sure there were people that read this headline and thought, oh my gosh, Tesla is suffering. What's going to happen? I'm going to sell my Tesla stock and all this other stuff. But you guys watching know better. Don't look at the headlines, look at the content of the article, and never take those articles for face value. But hey, I'm a Tesla bull, and maybe that makes me biased as well on the opposite spectrum here. Based on the information that I know, the information that I've seen, deliveries that I have been tracking for the last little while, especially for the Model Ys, it's clear to me that Tesla kind of does this in batches. Like in Canada, for example, what they'll do is they'll ship out a whole bunch of Model 3s, Model Ys every so often, and if you manage to place your order before that shipment, yeah, you get your car delivered. If not, you have to wait for the next shipment, which is why you see numbers like 5 to 9 weeks for delivery. And I think as Tesla continues to expand, more factories pop up, they streamline production even more and all this kind of stuff, we'll see less and less of this being an issue because they'll be able to service much more of the market simultaneously as opposed to what they're doing right now. And for us as investors in Tesla stocks, it's a very interesting time because all this data out there, it definitely does affect Tesla's stock price and could present some very good buying opportunities in the coming weeks. So now, if you're a Tesla shareholder, what should you do? What am I personally doing with my Tesla shares? Now, clearly, if you can't tell, I don't think that this news article here is enough reason to sell out of my Tesla position. And when I look into the data further, everything still looks intact, everything still looks very strong for the business, and I'm still very happy with my investment. Now, we also know that Tesla is going to be reporting their earnings here in a couple of days, so that's going to be another interesting time, and what I'll be doing is just watching that stock very closely for it to potentially drop under that $350 per share price tag. So this is what Tesla stock looks like today before their earnings report, and I see that we are selling off, and the stochastics still show us that we're not quite done with the sell-off here, so I'm staying put. I even posted in my VIP group Discord that I wouldn't be surprised to see the stock dip below 350 after earnings, especially if the bears are able to have their way and spin any news in a negative light and make it seem like Tesla's run is over, demand has dried up, and that's the end of that. Anyways, guys, I know you're smarter than that, and I hope this video provided you a lot more insight as to what the headlines try to put across. If you enjoyed this video or you found value in it, all I ask you, share this with a friend and drop a like down below to support the channel. Either way, guys, thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to invest positively, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.